Welcome back to Cards and Comics, guys. Today I have another complete set from the 90s to talk about that I just purchased. Is a 1996 Pacific Crown Royal Pro Bowl die cut. So this is a 20 card set that came one per box. So this is a one per box insert. So it's pretty cool to have the whole set. And there's 20 cards in it. And to me, it's a really interesting time period because this is before Peyton and Brady enter the league. So it's a combination of the 80s stars kind of fading out and the new 90s, late 90s, early 2000s players coming in to take over. So it's a change in the guard, but it's that in between. So first card in the set is Jeff Blake from Cincinnati. And I think we all know that he did not make a lot of Pro Bowls after this. So it's an interesting time period card for Jeff Blake. You can see the intricate die cut on the pineapple. And you can see this is the one of the cards I did get in the set that is a little damaged. So you can see that palm tree right there is damaged. But it's Jeff Blake, and honestly, I can probably replace him in the set pretty cheaply. There you go. That's card number 1, Jeff Blake. We'll move on to card 2. And again, this is a set that's interesting because it's basically all pro. So there's a lot of players in here that don't normally get insert cards, like Mark Chmura. Again, one of those really popular in Green Bay players, but definitely a card or a player you don't see or you don't have too many cards of. I think it's interesting that that he gets recognized in a pretty cool looking insert. And we'll talk about this insert now. One per box, super intricate die cuts. They made this set a lot of years. So, I would be interested in getting every year of the all pro die cut because they're so cool looking cards. And in theory, even one per box, they're not that expensive, but they're popular, meaning that people will get their, Barry Sanders and the Aikmans and Marinos, and the popular players will bring some money. So they're not super duper cheap. But there's the Mark Chmura, and you can see one thing that was interesting when I looked at this set was when you look at the die cut, sometimes the paper didn't completely cut. You can see where, because it's such an intricate die cut, you didn't get a lot of, always get clean cuts. So this is a good example of a card not having some clean cuts that make it, I probably have a little character. But there's Mark Chmura, and here's the backs. You can see the die cut there. Again, card number 2. So that's card number 2, Mark Chmura. Here's card number 3. Here is Marshall Faulk as a Indianapolis Colt. I always think that's interesting when I see him as a Colt. Because remember, we know around 99, you had Edgerrin James taking over, and but Marshall Faulk was great, and obviously had a great career. So still a cool card to have of a really good player. And I love, there we go. Camera zooming. There you go. That is the green. Foil on it. And I just think it's a really cool set. So next up, first kind of like real superstar. There's Brett Favre. And I also like the fact that they didn't cheap out and didn't show him in the Pro Bowl uniform. I like the fact that we see him in their Pro Bowl uniform. Makes the set look a lot cooler, in my opinion, with those really cool die cuts. So again, I think this is one of those sets that has a lot going for it. Die cuts, a lot of good players, but again, it's that time period where you get that transition. So you got Brett Favre, who played well into the 90s, late 90s, 2000s. So he's kind of in that transition. But then you got guys like Charles Haley, who is a 90s player for the most part. And here he is as a Cowboy. Remember, he played on both the Cowboys and the 49ers teams back in the day. He was kind of like Deion Sanders, who flipped back and forth. And here's Merton Hanks, which is cool to see a Merton Hanks Pro Bowl card. So that's really interesting because there's a lot of players in it that, again, probably only had a few of these kind of special insert cards made of them, like Chamora, Merton Hanks. It's just cool to see other players. Next up is a really cool card for me because it's a Steeler, Greg Lloyd, who was a monster on defense. And so I always like seeing Greg Lloyd cards. There's the back. And showing off that green die cut. So it's Greg Lloyd. Another big card, Dan Marino. Really fun to see Marino. Again, this is like, it's just so funny to see like who the all-stars were. Jeff Blake, Dan Marino. Obviously within 5 years, this was a completely different NFL with Brady and Manning getting into the league. Curtis Martin. I don't know. I say Chris Warren. Curtis Martin, who had a great career. So I think people forget how good his career was. I think running backs in general, unless you're Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith, people don't know who the rest of the 90s had. But you had Terrell Davis, Curtis Martin. You had a ton of great backs in the 90s as well. Anthony Miller. So I think he was a wide receiver. First Pro Bowl selection. So again, if I was a Bronco fan or an Anthony Miller fan, it's probably like one of the few cool inserts that he probably was made with this guy. So that's why, again, this set is really interesting for the player selection. This is right off the Pro Bowl roster. Herman Moore. He had a lot of good years at Detroit. So there you go. Herman Moore. Fun card. And again, just a lot of players you don't normally see in these kind of sets. Here's another good one. Bryce Pop. Look at that. As a Buffalo Bills fan, being in the New York area, kind of default my New York team. But you can see he has also a little bit of a crease in that upper right corner, that tip. So on that tree. So tough to keep these cards in good shape. Honestly, also, when I put him in the top loader and trying to get him in the sleeve was very hard. In fact, they're sleeved upside down because I had to put the tree in first, because if I tried to put it in last, all those little leaves would hang up and I wouldn't get it in there. So, but Bryce Pop, and I remember as a kid hearing that name a lot, but not being from Buffalo or in the area, I just, he's probably amazing. I just don't know as much about him. Here's Jerry Rice, another big name in the set. And I don't know, like, there's a little bit of a whiteness on this card. You can see it right there. It's how it's cut. That's just a little, the edge didn't cut as clean. It's not damaged in terms of like creasing or whatever. It's just a little white left over from how it was cut. And a lot of cards in this collection are like that. I just don't know how they would grade. How PSA would grade cards like this. I'm assuming they would give it a 2. But anyway, I think it's interesting because I can't really see a ton of these cards grading a 10. They're just a really tough looking set to get graded. Next up is the big card. There you go, Barry Sanders. So fun to see Sanders in these sets still. So it's like you get these really big time stars like Sanders and Jerry Rice mixed in with Bryce Pop and Herman Moore, and not as big of Hall of Famers, or in some cases just good players. Chamora, Jeff Blake. So it's a really eclectic mix of superstars and just good players. Next up, Junior Seau. Again, a cool card of Junior Seau. And again, I love the fact they're all in their Pro Bowl uniform. So this was taken either at practice or in the game. So that makes it even cooler to see him in that uniform. Here we go. There we go. Emmitt Smith. Another big card in the set. This is probably the third best card in the set behind Barry and Jerry Rice. I was hoping there would be a Reggie White in the set, but there is not, alas. But cool Emmitt Smith. Yancey Thigpen. So again, it's funny how many times the Steelers got these great wide receivers to play, and then they just keep finding them. And even now they still have good wide receivers. Quarterback play has been a little suspect the last couple of years, so we'll see if the Steelers can turn it around. Very interesting. They're going to be in Hard Knocks this year. It's going to be really, really wild. So there's Chris Warren. People forget how good this guy was. He was a stud, running over kind of back in the day. You don't see too many of those guys today that can run you over and catch and do all the things he was doing. So he's a really good player. Chris Warren. And again, another player you don't see too often, Ricky Watters. That guy was a stud, so I mean, for a lot of years. So it doesn't surprise me to see him in an All-Pro set. Ricky Watters, and then last but not least, obviously from the national, their NFC, get Steve Young, quarterback. That makes sense. And this is when he was at his peak, taking over for Montana, and it's cool to see that really cool die cut again, Steve Young. So it's a really fun set. It's a little expensive because again, it's just a 1 per box insert, so people will charge a little bit more for these sometimes than maybe they're worth, because the cool die cuts, and everything. And so it's expensive, but not. I mean, if you think about it, like there's 20 cards in the set, you might be able to get the whole set for $100. If you really take the time to try to, work on someone who has it, and get them down below $100, which is like crazy. That'd be like $5 a card if you got that for $100. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think these are going to go up tremendously in value, but I do think player collectors will want to have, especially PSA 10 versions of that card, if they can get it, and they'll pay probably pretty good money for it. So, will they grade 10? No, very few cards will grade 10 from the set that I have right now. It's just because it's just that's how they were made, how they were die cut. It's just you're not going to see a ton of high grades, and if you do, I might be a little suspicious, but hey, this could have got backdoored as well. The cards like this. So, but there it is, guys. That is my 1996 Pacific Crown Collection All-Pro die cut complete set. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you next time on Cards and Comics. Bye.